Hi guys, and thank you so much for joining me. If you are new here, I'm Kat and I like to talk about true crime, conspiracies and all sorts of related things. In today's video I want to talk to you about a really known case. First, I want to ask you a question. I don't know if this ever happened to you, but for the last few weeks, lately, it was really nice and warm outside. I actually thought that spring is here, right? And you know that in the UK usually you have this horrible weather all year round. So when I saw the sunshine, like for 1 week, every single day without any drop of rain inside, if you live in the UK then you know what I mean, I was thinking to myself, yes, finally a bit of sunshine. Now I can turn off my heating. The next day after I turned off my heating, the rain started again, the wind started again. It's freezing cold that I had to turn the heating back on. And not to mention that what else happened? Did this ever happen to you where you turned off the heating and then you had to turn it back on? It's like, oh, it's so annoying, isn't it? And then also this happened, the slap of the century. It was the slap. I don't want to get into it with Will Smith and Chris Rock and his wife and everything else because I don't want to get involved into the drama of it all. But from my point of view, it made for a perfectly good PR move. Whether it was planned or whether it was just in the spur of the moment, it did make for a great PR move, because before the slap of the century that Will Smith gave Chris Rock, I had no idea that the Oscars or the Grammys, which one was it? See, I can't even remember now. I had no idea it was on. Did anyone even have any idea that this actually happened? Would you have known if you wouldn't have seen Will Smith's face plastered just about everywhere with the slap? The iconic slap? Well, anyway, that's enough. Please let me know, guys, if you had to turn off your heating and then you had to turn it back on, because this is driving me insane. Seriously, my heating at the moment is on, is still on, because like I said, the weather just took a 360-degree turn after I turned off the heating. Yes, it's always happening with me as well. When I go out, the weather is nice, I don't take a jacket on. After I go out, ooh, I'm freezing cold. Then, when I take an umbrella with me, it's so sunny outside. When I don't take an umbrella with me, it's raining outside. There you go, this is the weather. Anyway, let's get started with today's story, which I think that this has been heavily covered, and not only that, but it has been recently, very recently in the news. So that's the reason why I wanted to cover the case now, because we have a couple of new updates on it. So anyway, I want to go through the whole story with you. It's going to be another one of those long videos, because again, I don't want to split the videos in 2 or 3 parts, because I think that it's much better if I give you the full story in one video. I keep talking and talking. Stop me. You need to stop me. Delphi is a small town in the state of Indiana with around 3,000 people calling it home. Located along the Wabach River, which I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right, Delphi is roughly halfway between Indianapolis and Chicago. Delphi itself has the reputation for being a small town. The kind where, you know, everybody knows everybody, but also a town that people would occasionally visit because of its proximity to other cities, or the scenic parks which would attract hikers and outdoorsmen from outside. Since 2017, however, Delphi became clouded by a violent incident that unfolded within its beauty. A double murder that shook the entire town. This was a type of crime that was never seen in this area before. And even though police released quite a few details of this supposed killer to the public, he managed to evade police and prosecution in the years since. But after doing my research on this case, I am confident the police are now very close to catching him. So buddy, matey, your days are numbered. Today we are talking about the Delphi murders, a case that shook the world. But before we get started, I just want to give you a quick warning. We will be discussing some details of, a crime against children, and I will try to go in details in depth. So if this is something that you get triggered by, then I will see you in my next video. And also, I don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in today's video. This is for educational purposes only, and all the information I'm giving you is found in the public domain. Thank you so much. Yes, I know that my foundation is much darker than my chest because I went to the shop to buy a new foundation to match my skin tone. They said, oh, we will match your skin tone, and it turns out it doesn't match my skin tone, it's much darker. I had another foundation which I said I'll stop using it because it's too light for my skin tone, and it made me look like too pale for my liking, much more pale than my actual skin tone. Actually, it turns out that I'm having an issue with finding a foundation. This has been going on for years. Anyway, never mind. Wrong foundation, whatever. Liberty Rose Lynn German was born on December 27th of 2002 to Derek German and Carrie Timmons. She had sisters Kelsey, Glenna, Alexis and Hayden, and she was really close with her grandparents Mike and Betty Petty, who were her primary guardians. As a child, Liberty loved baking, painting and other crafts, and was described as an incredibly bright young girl with good grades in school who was constantly trying to be the best student in each of her classes. She loved being outdoors and she loved sports. She was active in volleyball, softball, soccer and swimming. Liberty attended Delphi Community Middle School and she was in the 8th grade. She had recently celebrated her 14th birthday ahead of her best friend Abby. The two became close after playing on the same 7th grade volleyball team. After that, the two girls became inseparable. Another friend of Liberty's, called Arika Gibson, who always knew Liberty by her nickname Libby, remembered her as being a band geek who was very outgoing and incredibly smart. She was huge on science and became inspired to become a science teacher while attending Delphi Community Middle School. She even started taking classes at Purdue University in Lafayette, a city located just 15 miles away from Delphi. Libby was also a supportive and loving friend, always there to give advice or a shoulder to cry on for anyone that needed it. God knows that we all need to have friends like that. Abigail Joyce Williams was born on June 23rd of 2003 to her mother Anna Williams. It's not known who her father was, but he didn't play an active role in her life, and Abigail, nicknamed Abby, had no other siblings. She had a really strong bond with her mother, but she was also very close with her grandparents Eric and Diane Erskine, whom she would call Papa and Mima. She also had a great close relationship with her aunts, uncles, cousins and the other grandfather Cliff. Abby also loved being outdoors. She loved riding ATVs while on camping trips with her family in Michigan. She also loved other activities that engaged her creatively. In addition to reading, she loved photography, art and drawing. She had a lot in common with her friend Libby. No wonder that the girls became inseparable. Abby was one hard to crack, at least at first, but once she did, she had a reputation for being loyal and loving. She had the best personality, she was fearless and so kind. Abby was also attending Delphi Community Middle School and she was in the same grade as Libby, the 8th grade. Arika Gibson, another student who was friends with both Libby and Abby, said that Abby was quiet in front of people, but she was not quiet at all in front of their group of friends. Abby played saxophone in her school band and she was also on the volleyball team. Her 14th birthday was fast approaching and Abigail was looking forward to high school and all of its adventures, which she planned to experience with her best friend Libby. February 13th of 2017 was the day before Valentine's Day. It was a Monday, and it was also a planned snow day, a day in the middle of winter set aside for the school schedule, just, in case it would be needed. A planned snow day is just a day set aside at the beginning of the school year to help keep the schedule from overflowing into the summer. Since there were no major closures up to that point, it just became a day off for the students and staff. Abby and Libby, as well as their families, had grown very close in the year leading up to this point. The two girls had spent the night together before the day off. In the weekend they had a sleepover, and earlier in the day they made a last-minute plan to go hiking in an area that Libby was familiar with. It was unusually warm for a winter day, so they wanted to make the best of it and spend a few hours outdoors, since both of them really loved outdoors. At around 1:45 that afternoon, Abby and Libby were dropped off at the trailhead by Kelsey, Libby's older sister, before she went off to work. The entrance to the trail, also known as Freedom Bridge, was located along County Road West 300 North, near the Hoosier Heartland Highway, a wooded area a few miles away from downtown Delphi. The trail itself is one of Delphi's historic trails and runs along an old abandoned railroad track. The path leads to an old railroad bridge which overlooks the body of water named Deer Creek, which is a tributary of the Wabach River, and the lower part of it is quite popular with the locals for canoeing and rafting. The railroad bridge, called the Monon High Bridge, really lives up to its name. It's about 60 feet tall, making it the second highest bridge in all of Indiana. It's also very old, being built in the 1890s. Considering that this bridge is very old and has also been abandoned, not being used as a railway bridge anymore, and with no maintenance to it, this bridge can be quite scary to walk on if you are not familiar with it, because it has a lot of gaps in between the wood planks, which can also make walking along the bridge a thrilling experience if you are looking for one. But it's also hard to walk quickly on it, as you need to keep your eyes down to the bridge itself, looking for footholds and to avoid tripping. Obviously, it's more than 50 feet above the creek, so the last thing you want to do is trip and fall in the creek below. About half an hour after being dropped off at the trailhead, Abby and Libby posted a few pictures on Snapchat. One was a black and white photo of the bridge itself, and the other, which would become widely known just a few hours later, showed Abby crossing the bridge. This is the girls' last known location. Around 1 hour after these photos were posted on Snapchat, a bit after 3 p.m., Libby's father, Derek, arrived at their planned pickup location. He arranged to pick up the girls, and just a few minutes before arriving at the location, he tried calling Libby's phone to let her know he was almost there. But Libby never answered the phone, and even after minutes of Derek waiting at the pickup spot, the girls would never reach him. Derek carried on calling Libby's phone, but there was no answer. So, thinking that perhaps the girls got lost or distracted by something, he got out of his car and he started walking the trail. As he did, he passed by an older man who was in his mid to late 70s, who was wearing a flannel shirt and walking along the trail. Naturally, he asked the man if he saw Libby and Abby. Unfortunately, the man didn't see the girls at all. Derek starts panicking and he starts calling family members to ask about the girls, and very soon, knowing it will get dark and they were just not quite dressed for the temperatures of the evening, him and a few family members began to canvass the area looking for the girls on the trail. Without any success, at around 5:30 p.m. the decision was made to officially report Abby and Libby as missing to the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, who sent out officials to begin looking for them. The search was conducted by the Sheriff's Department as well as by members of the Delphi Police Department, the Delphi Fire Department, and the Department of Natural Resources. In addition to conducting a massive search on foot, the officials even tried to ping the girls' cell phones to gain a better understanding of where they were, but it was believed that their phones were either dead or they were turned off, as their phones stopped pinging earlier in the day. The search lasted for several hours, expanding out from their last known location, the Monon High Bridge they posted photos of on Snapchat. Due to the darkness and temperatures below freezing, the search was unfortunately called off shortly before midnight, as the terrain had become nearly impossible to navigate. When the search was called off, police didn't suspect any foul play, not immediately anyway. Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lisenby didn't believe the girls were in immediate danger and didn't think that further efforts such as issuing an Amber Alert would be necessary. The biggest threat he considered was the elements, the darkness, the freezing temperatures, and the creek. Police believed initially that the girls were still alive, and maybe because of their age they just decided to travel to a friend's house without telling their family. Unfortunately, 12 hours later, this belief would be proven to be completely wrong. The search for Abby and Libby picked up again the following morning, on Tuesday, February 14th, on Valentine's Day. The search crews gathered near the Monon High Bridge at around 10 a.m., hoping to expand outwards in separate directions and cover a good plot of land during daylight hours. This included both canine units and specialized dive teams who began to search in and around local bodies of water. This search only lasted for a couple of hours, as a discovery was made by the Delphi Fire Department shortly after noon. At around 12:45 p.m., officials with the fire department followed a set of footprints to a location roughly 50 feet away from the north bank of Deer Creek, around half a mile east of the bridge. The Delphi fire chief reported the discovery as not good and indicated that this was the missing girls' bodies. Police wouldn't disclose any details about the discovery, at least not immediately. The only detail that became public knowledge was that this discovery was made on a plot of land belonging to a local man named Ronald Logan, who police believe didn't have anything to do with this crime. It was just a large plot of wooded land along Deer Creek, and police would withhold almost all of their information about this discovery. Later in the afternoon, a brief press conference was held with officials for the Delphi Police Department, Carroll County Sheriff's Department, and Indiana State Police speaking to the media. They were very vague about any details, and they seemed unwilling to admit that the discovery was that of the two missing girls. On 15th of February 2017, police would confirm the bodies found on the 14th were those of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. This followed an autopsy in Terre Haute, Indiana, but the results from that autopsy were immediately sealed. Despite the press announcing that the girls had been murdered, they would refuse to release any specific details, such as the cause of death. Sergeant Kim Riley of the Indiana State Police later told the press, "There is somebody out there who did this crime, and we are going to find them." Later in the evening, police released a photo of a man that they wanted to speak to. The man was someone who was walking on the same trail the victims were on. In fact, the photo released showed him walking along the same stretch of bridge that the two girls took photos of and uploaded to Snapchat shortly before their deaths. The image of this man seemed to be cropped from a much larger image, but also this image of the man was not from a photo taken by the girls, but rather a very chilling video footage. That's one of the reasons why the photo is of such a poor quality, showing the man as a heavily pixelated figure that is very hard to make out. However, based on the image, you can make out some details of the man. He looks just like a regular character, maybe a bit on the larger side, wearing blue jeans, a navy blue colored jacket, a hoodie underneath the jacket, and a paperboy looking hat. He was photographed walking with his head down and his hands in his pockets. Police didn't officially name this man as a suspect, but just a person of interest that they would like to speak to. However, That would change just a few days later on February 19th, when he was officially named the primary suspect in this investigation. Following the release of this image, authorities praised Liberty German, one of the two victims, who managed to capture not only an image of this man before her death, but also video and audio. Although incredibly young, Libby took the chance to turn on her phone's camera and record this individual as he approached the two girls, not knowing if he would do them any harm, but that he might. Libby had the phone in her pocket, and even when the video stopped recording, the audio still carried on. It was not known if police recovered Libby's phone at the crime scene or if the files were taken directly from the cloud backup her phone was linked to, but her quick thinking gave police their first lead in the case. In fact, if this case ever gets solved, many people say that 14-year-old Libby German helped solve her own murder. Sergeant Tony Slocum of the Indiana State Police stated, "That young lady is a hero, that is no doubt. To have enough presence of mind to activate the video system on her cell phone to record what we believe is criminal behavior about to occur, there is no doubt in our mind that she is a hero." The video, which was not released to the public at the time, shows this strange man walking towards the two girls who were actively filming him. The image that was widely circulated just days after the girls' deaths was taken from this particular video, a small still shot enough to capture the man's overall appearance. The audio, which was probably taken from the longer video, reveals the man telling the girls down the hill. I will let you hear the audio for yourself.
Downhill, 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 downhill.
It's believed that this audio clip was the man telling the girls to go down the hill on the southeast side of the bridge, where he probably followed them and then cornered them. Let's hear this again.
Downhill, downhill.
Probably Libby recorded a much longer video segment which the audio and image came from, and many think that the audio was recorded with the phone hidden, maybe in Libby's pocket. It's also possible that this longer segment includes either video or audio of the crime itself being carried out, which is why investigators don't really want to release many more details about what was recorded on Libby's phone. Of course that they will want to protect their investigation and obviously preserve evidence which could potentially be used in a future trial. However, police have revealed details about this person of interest, who is believed to be a white male who stands somewhere between 5 foot 6 inches and 5 foot 10 inches tall, weighs somewhere between 180 and 220 pounds, with reddish brown hair and an unknown eye color. His age is undetermined, with him originally believed to be middle-aged, but that would evolve as the case continued evolving over the next couple of years. Investigators now believe he is anywhere between 18 and 40 years old, with a potentially youthful appearance. He was nicknamed the Bridge Guy, or BG, in various online communities, and he was originally named a person of interest by police, who simply wanted to speak to him. But just days later, like I mentioned, police would change that and label him a suspect in the murder, as well as the most likely culprit. Officials with the Indiana State Police would state, during the course of the investigation, preliminary evidence has led investigators to believe the person in the distributed photo is suspected of having participated in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. A composite image of this man was released to the public months later, in June of 2017. Police would claim that this sketch was the result of information called into the tip line, as well as additional information obtained through follow-up investigations. This is the sketch that would be widely circulated in the aftermath of the crime. But, as we will soon learn, this may not have been accurate or even helpful. The investigation, which was a joint effort between Indiana State Police and the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, began looking over the stories of those close to the victims. This included family members and friends, those that are typically looked into at the onset of any investigation. In the meantime, other investigators began to look at registered sex offenders in the area, which in itself is not an indication that any type of this crime actually took place. Rather, this is just the natural starting point for any similar investigation. Although I have my own thoughts on this, but we will cover that later. Police also looked to obtain security footage from any establishments nearby, using them to identify people that had been near the crime scene on the day in question. It's also believed that cell phone records were looked over in an attempt to find any cell phones that had pinged near the two girls in the time frame of their death. Sergeant Kim Riley of the Indiana State Police stated, "We are checking their cell phones, we are checking their social media places, Twitter, Facebook and that, to see if there is some type of connection there. We are looking at every possible option. Everybody is a suspect." The case drew attention to Delphi from all over the country, with celebrities like Nancy Grace, Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil taking an interest in the case. Each covered the show on their programs in 2017, bringing a spotlight to this little-known region in Indiana. In addition, the FBI began utilizing roughly 6,000 electronic billboards across 46 states to spread images of the victims and the alleged culprit. Over the next several weeks, police would receive thousands of tips. It's estimated that by June of 2017, around 4 months later, they received around 18,000 tips from the public. Because of this influx of information, authorities had to recruit the help of the FBI and Homeland Security, who helped set up a specialized communication dish to handle the overwhelming number of calls being received. Many of these tips were then forwarded to FBI call centers, who helped handle the overflow of information. In addition to all of the positive publicity, which was helping investigators receive new tips and leads just about every hour, there was also a lot of false confessions and irrelevant theories. In addition to the number of useless leads being called in to officials, it's believed that officials had to deal with a number of individuals confessing to the murders but not knowing any of the intimate details of the crime itself. This would only make their job more difficult in the months to come, as the case began to look tougher to crack with each passing day. On February 22, 2017, around 1 week after the murder of the two girls and the discovery of their bodies, police officials from throughout the region held a joint press conference which was broadcast through the region and later the whole nation. At times, these police officials, lifelong public servants who dedicated their lives to law enforcement, struggled to speak through clearly rough emotions. Police would refuse to release any specific details about the case, such as how the two girls had been killed or how they were discovered. They would also refuse to say whether or not they were looking for a murder weapon or anything like that. Even now, those details remain heavily guarded by police. Ronald Logan, a Delphi resident whose property the girl's body had been found on, was also investigated by police. Ron was an older man who had problems with the law in the past, but mostly seemed to have an issue with alcohol and no other violent crimes. At the time of the murder, Ronald owned that property for more than 50 years, and he was questioned by police several times over the next several weeks. On February 16th of 2017, just 2 days after the bodies were discovered in the woods, police conducted a search warrant at his home along West Bicycle Bridge Road, around 5 miles away from the crime scene on the other side of Delphi. Police would spend roughly 2 hours inside the home collecting evidence and taking photos, but no arrests would be made. It was discovered that Ron, who had a suspended license, drove a load of garbage to a nearby dump on the day that the girls were murdered. To some investigators, this was a really strange coincidence, and the next month a search was conducted of his property. However, police considered this search as a normal course of the investigation, and he was then cleared of any potential involvement. It seems like police never really considered him a viable suspect. Later, Ron would speak to journalists about the property he owned, which was difficult to access. He described it as a heavily wooded area, often full of hunters and fishermen who often found it difficult walking anywhere over a long distance with equipment because of steep slopes and jagged drops. Describing the distance between his property and the bridge the girls had likely been attacked by their killer, Logan stated, for them to get from there to all the way here with that rough territory they had to walk. You couldn't carry them in a million years or drag them or drop them off. They had to walk. Police continued searching for details in the time frame of the crime. More specifically, they were looking for anyone who was at or around the Monon High Bridge between 2:30 and 5:30 p.m. on February 13, 2017. Anyone in the vicinity was a suspect to the police, and them coming forward to provide information could only help clear up their potential involvement and help figure out whether or not they had potentially met either the girls or their killer. Now, as with all heavily reported and covered cases, you will obviously hear rumors, theories and such, be it online or offline. There are a few rumors in particular that I found quite interesting, so I wanted to share them with you. But like I said, these are just rumors, so take it with a grain of salt. There is a rumor reported by an eyewitness the day after the murder. Allegedly, there was a woman near the area of the crime who met a young man in a truck near one of the Monon High Bridge trailheads. She claims that the man's vehicle was broken down and he refused to make eye contact with her. When she approached, trying to offer help, the man told her that he was waiting for his dad to pick him up. She left but told her husband about the encounter later that evening. The following day, after she learned about the two murdered girls not too far away from where she had been, she reported the incident to police. Another rumor is about a meat processing plant, which is around 2.5 miles away from the Monon High Bridge. The plant employs hundreds, if not thousands, of young men that may or may not live in Delphi, but they end up becoming familiar with the area for work. Several of the individuals work there because while the job is emotionally draining and it can be traumatic at times, it's still a job. Some of those that are employed at the plant don't exactly have a lot of options, and some can be otherwise unemployable. Around 1 week after the murders on February 22nd, a bomb threat was called into the meat processing plant. This resulted in a police raid of the facility, and police were photographed taking away several pieces of evidence, including a pair of boots, which many think may have had some relevance to the ongoing murder investigation. Police called the bomb threat and the following raid totally unrelated to the homicide investigation, but that didn't stop those in the area and those following the case from speculating endlessly. Following this atrocious double murder of two beautiful young girls, which received national and international attention, Delphi began to show a huge amount of support for the family of Libby and Abby. Not only did the town come together to raise awareness for this case, but they began participating in fundraising efforts for the expenses the families would have to bear, such as memorial services, funerals, as well as the reward fund. Local businesses began donating proceeds and organizing events, including a February motorcycle benefit that brought more than 3,000 people to Delphi. The reward fund, which was originally announced at $41,000 in February, soon grew to more than $200,000. This was due in part to major contributions from Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay and retired Colts punter-turned-entertainer Pat McAfee, as well as numerous fundraising and crowdfunding efforts from the area. On February 18th of 2017, the first Saturday after the murder of Libby and Abby, a public memorial service was held at their school, which was attended by thousands of people that all gathered to say goodbye to the two girls. Earlier in the day, a private ceremony had been attended by the girls' friends and family. The loved ones of Abigail Williams and Liberty German would struggle to move on after this tragic loss. Each of them played such a vital role in their families, and in such a small town, their faces were plastered almost everywhere. It was hard to go anywhere without their loved ones being constantly reminded of their loss in some way. Abby's grandmother, Diane Erskine, later told Inside Edition, "It's like I had open heart surgery, but they never used any anesthetic, and they say, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to live this way, with part of your heart missing the rest of your life." Most of the two girls' families would stay quiet for a long period of time, allowing the police to handle the case both publicly and behind the scenes. However, later in 2017, several family members would appear on an episode of Dr. Phil where they tried to rekindle some public interest in the investigation. I won't be able to show you any clips from Dr. Phil due to copyright issues, but I can leave links for the clips in the description down below. Mike Petty, Liberty's grandfather, said on this broadcast, "Somebody knows something. Nobody lives in total isolation in today's world, and I'm asking that person, please help us out." Anna Williams, Abigail's mother, who lost her only child in this senseless act of violence, seemed to express a fear regarding the case's unsolved nature. "My fear is that we could be here 10 years from now and we won't know what happened or why." The investigation to find the killer of Liberty German and Abigail Williams became a joint investigation between Indiana State Police and the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, who also had help from the Delphi Police Department. These officials began reaching out to other state and federal agencies, quickly obtaining the help of the FBI. Within a year, they had even enlisted the help of both Tennessee and Georgia state agencies, expanding the scope of their search and reinforcing certain aspects. When the FBI became involved in the earliest days of the investigation, they brought with them behavioral analysts who helped create a rough outline of a suspect. According to the FBI, this killer was someone who had likely changed behaviors on or around February 13, 2017. A change in their sleep pattern, possible abuse of drugs or alcohol, increased anxiousness or irritability. They could also show a particular interest in following the case through the media, which would not be seen as normal. Like, for example, someone obsessively trying to find out everything they can in any way possible, maybe glued to the screen 24/7, searching only about this case. They could also have strange conversations about where they were when the crime happened on February 13, maybe with the intention to give themselves an alibi to people who knew them. Greg Massa, the FBI's assistant special agent in charge, acted as the FBI's spokesperson early on in the investigation. At the February 22nd press conference, he spoke about the behaviors and actions the killer might have expressed in the days after the crime. One of the earliest theories in this case is the belief that the murders of Abby and Libby might be related to a similar crime that unfolded roughly 5 years earlier. On July 13, 2012, a pair of cousins went missing in Evansdale, Iowa, about 400 miles northwest of Delphi, Indiana. The cousins were 10-year-old Lyric Cook Morrissey and 8-year-old Elizabeth Collins, who went missing while riding their bikes in downtown Evansdale. Their bikes were eventually found at a park nearby, but the kids were not found. A massive search followed, and eventually the bodies of the two girls were found in a heavily wooded area roughly 20 miles away from where they disappeared. By the time their bodies were discovered, the case had long grown cold. From the earliest days of the Delphi investigation, it has been linked to the Evansdale case, as the stories seem very similar to each other. Both cases have two young girls who were abducted at the same time, in broad daylight, and their bodies placed in rural areas nearby. Both cases unfolded in the Midwest, and the bodies were disposed of in heavily wooded areas frequented by hunters. In the case of Lyric Cook and Elizabeth Collins, their bodies were actually discovered by hunters. And in both cases, the details of the murder, such as the cause of death, the state of the remains, would be kept private. The police handling the separate cases have kept many details guarded and they refuse to budge on any specifics. In addition, there are a number of other similarities. Both crimes took place on the 13th of the month. Both disappearances happened in the early afternoon. In both cases, family members were ruled out as suspects, meaning that a stranger who was probably previously unknown to the victims abducted and killed the girls. This is also very rare, according to both the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who state that most abductions happen via a family member or a family friend. The FBI also stated that this kind of crimes, double abductions in the middle of the day, are incredibly rare. Between 1974 and 2012, the FBI recorded only 15 of these incidents, meaning that the likelihood of two similar abduction murders taking place in the same geographic area just a few years apart has to be very small, especially if the two cases are unrelated, because what are the odds that two similar killers happen to live less than 500 miles from one another? Investigators in charge of these two cases have publicly stated that they compared notes between the cases, but because of details that have yet to be publicly released, they don't believe the cases are related. In September of 2017, more than half a year after the murders of Abby and Libby, a man was arrested in Woodland Park, Colorado. The man was threatening people with a hatchet on a hiking trail at around the same time that a cyclist was shot dead on the same trail. Following his arrest, it was learned that this man, 31-year-old Daniel J. Nations, was a registered SEX offender from Indiana that was driving around with expired Indiana license plates. He was homeless, having moved away from Greenwood, Indiana in May of 2017, just months after the Delphi murders. The police immediately began to suspect that this man's story might be worth pursuing. They began to see him as a possible person of interest in the ongoing Delphi investigation, and El Paso County Sheriff's officials who apprehended the man in their Colorado jurisdiction declared that there were many similarities between Daniel and the unidentified killer from Indiana. Daniel was forced to register as a SEX offender because of several criminal acts, including a 2016 incident where he was discovered masturbating in a women's restroom while peeping on women in other stalls. This followed a similar incident from 2007, which kicked off his criminal career. He had several run-ins with law enforcement over the years, including drug offenses, and he also had a history of DV. In 2016, Daniel was convicted of DV in Morgan County, Indiana. His wife, Caitlin Nations, later admitted to reporters that her husband had an issue with anger, which really began to manifest itself in January 2017, 1 month before the Delphi murders. That was when he lost his only remaining family member, his brother, to violent crime. When asked about whether or not he was capable of killing someone, Caitlin responded, "I don't really know, but he scares the heck out of me." Caitlin also admitted that Daniel looked remarkably like the composite image released by police in June 2017, but hesitated on whether or not she believed he was responsible. She told reporters with the publication The Gazette that Daniel lived more than an hour away from the crime scene and didn't have a vehicle of his own to get there. Even though he may have looked like the composite image released by police, he didn't really look like the image of the figure captured on Libby's cell phone. Caitlin also said that he didn't own the clothing owned by the supposed killer. Speaking to reporters from the Gazette, she stated, "I can't tell if that is him or not, but the one thing I'm not going to buckle on, he did not have that jacket." Following his arrest for threatening hikers with a machete in Colorado, Daniel Nations was sentenced to 3 years probation. However, he would remain in police custody due to an outstanding warrant from Johnson County, Indiana. On January 24th of 2018, he was transferred to Indiana custody for failing to register as a SEX offender. A few weeks later, in February of 2018, investigators handling the Delphi investigation would state that Daniel Nations was no longer considered an active person of interest in their ongoing investigation. They wouldn't say why exactly, but of course several theories began circulating online for those following the case, most of which seem to rule out Daniel Nations as a suspect. It has been reported that Daniel has a distinct walk, described as a limp, and he seems to be much smaller than the supposed killer, maybe 15 to 25 pounds lighter. He also has a southern accent, which is unlike the audio recording released to the public. Additionally, he may have also had an alibi for the day of the murders, as well as having a lack of reliable transportation to and from the crime scene, which would make placing him at the location nearly impossible. As of right now, Daniel is not a suspect in the case, even though many of the early details seem to match up. Daniel gave his DNA to investigators in the Delphi case, and when speaking to reporters with the Gazette, Daniel Nations later stated, "I feel like a victim in this situation. I just want people to know the truth, that I am not a monster." John Miller was a 59-year-old that lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, around 100 miles southwest of Delphi. Described as an angry and secluded old man by his neighbors, he was known mostly for his rough temper. In July of 2018, more than a year after the Delphi murders, John Miller was arrested in a 30-year-old cold case. The case itself was the 1988 murder of April Tinsley, which happened in 1988, more than 3 decades prior. April Tinsley, an 8-year-old, went missing while out playing with her friends. Days later, her body was discovered, strangled and essayed, and the killer left behind several clues taunting the police as well as the loved ones of April. The case went cold many years prior, but advancements in DNA technology allowed investigators to narrow down the suspect pool. This eventually led them straight to 59-year-old John Miller, who still lived in the area all these years later. Following his arrest, he confessed to the crime to investigators and later pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 80 years in prison, where he will be until his death. In the months since his arrest and guilty plea, John became a popular suspect for web detectives and followers of the Delphi case, as he lived less than 2 hours away from the crime scene and seems to have had a motivation to commit similarly heinous crimes. In a taunt to police back in 1988, he wrote in crayon that he would kill again. Police have been intentionally vague about this potential link, with Indiana State Police Sergeant Kim Riley stating in response to a question about Miller, "We have 1,000 names out there and we are still looking at all of them." On November 19, 2018, in St. Louis, Missouri, a man entered a Catholic supply store. There, he essayed 2 women, and when a third refused to comply with his demands, she was shot and killed. The description of the person responsible was incredibly similar to the man recorded on 14-year-old Libby German's phone more than a year and a half prior in Delphi, Indiana, around 300 miles away from this Catholic supply store. The man was described as being middle-aged, standing between 5'7" to 5'9" inches tall, and he was wearing a paperboy hat as well as a navy blue Carhartt-style jacket, also known as a bomber jacket. The similarities down to the clothing were striking. In just a few days, police identified the suspect in the Catholic supply shooting, a 53-year-old man named Thomas Bruce. Bruce was a U.S. Navy veteran, an advocate for gun rights, and he was also a pastor between 2003 and 2007. Since then, he fell on hard times, having filed for bankruptcy in January of 2017 along with his wife. He was unemployed at the time of the essay and the shooting and looked very similar to the suspect from the unsolved Delphi murders. About 1 week after the shooting in the Catholic supply store, Thomas Bruce was arraigned on first-degree murder charges as well as additional charges of sodomy, armed criminal action, burglary, and tampering with evidence. On December the 4th, 2018, he was officially charged with 17 felony counts and was even later implicated in another crime in a neighboring county. He was also accused of invading the home of a 77-year-old woman in Jefferson County, Missouri in September of 2018, and then assaulting, SAing, and robbing her. He has since been charged in that crime as well, although at this point I wasn't able to find out if he was convicted for this crime as well or the legal proceedings are still ongoing. As of this moment though, police have yet to speak publicly about any possible connections between him and the Delphi crimes. On January the 8th, 2019, a 46-year-old named Charles Eldridge was arrested in Union City, Indiana, around 2 hours southeast of Delphi. Charles, who looks similar to the original sketch released by investigators in the Delphi murders, was held without bond. He allegedly arranged to meet up with a teenage girl who, unknown to him, was a police officer. Following his arrest, he admitted to engaging in sex acts with a different child under the age of 13 on multiple occasions. Once in custody, the mugshot of Charles Eldridge went viral, and people all over the world began to compare it to the composite image released by Indiana State Police in June 2017. The resemblance was astonishing, so much so that his arrest really set off alarm bells for those that were closely following the Delphi case. After his arrest in Union City, Randolph County officials shared Charles' information with the FBI, informing them that a link to Delphi might be possible. However, after this disclosure, they cautioned the public to refrain from making any more inflammatory public guesses. Quote, outside of the person resembling the sketch, there is currently zero evidence that ties him to this case, and he is not a suspect in the case. Although we understand that people are trying to help the investigation, by doing this with zero evidence other than a mere appearance, it can also hurt or hinder an investigation. End of quote. Despite showing odd behaviors online and looking like the composite image, there is nothing connecting Charles Eldridge to the murders of Abigail Williams or Liberty German. Charles Eldridge pled guilty to attempted child molestation and 2 counts of child molestation. He was sentenced to 30 years, 25 of which will be spent in the Indiana Department of Correction. The remaining 5 years were suspended. On April 22, 2019, the investigators handling the Delphi double murder announced that they were changing course. A few days before, they announced that they would be moving the case in a new direction and were expected to reveal significant news at a press conference. The family members of Abby and Libby, who were unaware of the information that would be shared, met with police just a short time before the press conference on Monday, April 22nd. The press conference was put together by Indiana State Police Superintendent Dow Carter, who was publicly involved with the case. At the Canal Center in Delphi, Indiana, he spoke to an assembly of loved ones, reporters, and even members of the public that were allowed to attend. I also think that they hoped the alleged killer would either be there attending or see it in the media. This press conference seemed to update most of the information previously released by investigators. The Indiana State Police had completely updated their suspect information, starting with an updated composite sketch, which is remarkably different from the original composite sketch released in June of 2017. This sketch features an individual with a narrow nose, thin lips, no facial hair, thick curly looking hair, and a stronger, more pronounced jaw. The individual in this sketch is also much younger than the original. Indiana State Police claim that this sketch represents the face of the person captured in the video on Liberty German's cell phone as he was walking on the high bridge, the bridgeman. Unfortunately, this newly released sketch is also much more vague, looking like potentially thousands of young men in the area. The artist of this sketch, ISP Master Trooper Taylor Bryant, stated that this sketch was based on a description given to him by an eyewitness and it wasn't based on any additional information in comparison to the original sketch. Even more so, this sketch was made just days after the girls' bodies were found back in February 17, 2017, but was just now being released. So this sketch is the first sketch of the bridgeman, and according to police, the first sketch released is not a person of interest in the investigation. However, that was a person of interest the police were looking for, but was already identified and cleared of any wrongdoing. Which to me honestly doesn't quite make sense, does it? I mean, for so many years you still go around with the same sketch and then all of a sudden you change your mind. It doesn't really make sense. The way I see it, in my opinion, the police did this for two reasons. Either they misled the public on purpose by not showing this earlier so it doesn't potentially scare away the suspect, maybe send him into hiding, and they know who he is but they can't quite pin it on him and they don't want him tipped off, or they just kept this hidden because they believed it's too broad of a sketch and they would be getting tons of useless tips and they wouldn't be able to check them all because there's no particular feature of this individual to distinguish him from the rest. And they are releasing this now to taunt the killer, to show him they know who he is and they are onto him. We need to keep in mind the police knows far more than we do. We don't know the cause of death, we don't know the murder weapon, we don't know anything specific, we don't know the crime scene, what evidence was found. There is a reason why this information is not being released. With the release of this new sketch, police were updating the supposed age of the killer. They no longer believed that he was middle-aged, but he was somewhere between 18 years old and 40 years old. This is quite a gap, but investigators believe that the killer might look much younger than he actually is. Perhaps he has a youthful appearance. For the first time, police publicly stated that the killer was likely familiar with Delphi itself, which means they no longer believed this was an outsider. Rather, this was someone who lived or worked in Delphi, or regularly visited for some other reason. Police would also reveal a fragment of a video which shows this individual walking on the high bridge. He has a weird motion to his step, but this could also be from the bridge itself, which has quite big gaps between the ties and can be hard to walk on. So maybe he's just being cautious when he walks on the bridge. The police also released a longer audio clip of the killer speaking, which I will play for you now. You'll hear the original clip of the man telling the girls down the hill and then he says, "Guys." So let's just give it a listen.
Guys. Downhill. Guys. Downhill.
Apart from the new composite image and updated media files, investigators also announced that they were seeking information about a car seen on a rural road near Delphi on the day of the murders. The car had been parked on County Road 300 North near the entrance to the bridge trail, close to the Hoosier Heartland Highway. It was there at some point between 12 and 5 p.m. on Monday, February 13, 2017, and was parked outside the old CPS-DCS welfare building, which at the time was abandoned. The building has since been demolished and is no longer standing. Police didn't reveal any details about this vehicle, like the make, the model or the color, only that they were looking to speak to the owner. Police stated that they actually knew the specific details of the car, but they wanted to filter out solid leads from people that actually might know the car's true owner. Because of this lead about the vehicle, a lot of people circled back to the rumors about the woman encountering a young man in a truck near the crime scene. Many think that this might explain the shift in direction for the investigation and give us a clue of what is to come. In a written statement directed at this unknown killer, which was released later in the day, ISP Superintendent Carter wrote, "We have a witness. You made mistakes. We are coming for you, and there's no place for a heartless coward like you to hide that gets this thrill from killing little girls." The investigation into the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German is still ongoing. The case is continuously being investigated by the FBI, the Indiana State Police, Carroll County Sheriff's officials, and many more. In 2018, investigators reached out to officials with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and other FBI field offices to look over the case files and notes with a fresh pair of eyes. The loved ones of Abby and Libby continue to speak to the press and raise awareness for the investigation, having started an initiative in 2017 to install orange light bulbs all throughout Indiana. This not only honors the girls but reminds the public that their killer remains at large, and until he's captured, no one can rest easy, not with him still out there. In December 2021, police announced that the murders may be in some way related to a fake social media profile called Anthony Shots. The creator of the fake profile used this information while communicating with underage girls to solicit nude images, obtain their addresses, and attempt to meet them. This profile was being used from 2016 to 2017 on social media applications including, but not limited to, Snapchat and Instagram. The fake profile Anthony Shots used a fake profile photo of images of a known male model and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and owning numerous sports cars. Police emphasized, however, that the man shown in the Anthony Shots photos is not a suspect. The connection of the Delphi murders to the Anthony Shots fake social media profile started with another incident reported to police just days after the bodies of Libby German and Abby Williams were discovered in February 2017. Police questioned Keegan Klein about the incident during an August 19, 2020 interview at the Indiana State Police post in Peru. Keegan is not charged with the killings of Libby German and Abby Williams. He is still being held in the Miami County Jail on 30 charges of child indecent material and exploitation. He admitted in court records to creating the Anthony Shots profile to communicate with underage girls and receive explicit images. Investigators seized 6 devices from Klein, including smartphones, a tablet, and an iPod Touch as part of the 2017 raid. Many of them contained images of child sex abuse material, according to the records. There were child SA material filed that depicted female children approximately 12 to 17 years of age posing nude and or partially nude and or performing a sex act on themselves. There were files located which depicted children between the approximate ages of 3 and 11 engaged in a SES act with an adult on his iPhone 4, according to court documents. Investigators also found a discussion of sharing links with child PORN files on Dropbox with another party who is not identified in court documents. The transcript of the video interview Keegan gave when he was arrested is 194 pages long. It was obtained through public records by the Murder Sheet podcast. That document has since been sealed in the court record. Police questioned Keegan in that interview about another school-aged girl that gave her address to Anthony Shots' profile just days after the Delphi murders. Keegan previously knew the girl's family from Galveston, Indiana. The police investigator told Keegan, "She comes home from school, sees this guy with a ski mask looking in her bedroom window directly after giving this address to Anthony Shots. As a matter of fact, that's the incident that started everything else last time. That's how everything started last time, was that incident." Keegan replies, "That's crazy." Police told him that he searched online for information about the family on February 19, 2017, the day before the incident. So, this incident appears to be the first suspicious connection police had to the Anthony Shots profile, which led them to Keegan Klein. The person behind Anthony Shots' profile was one of the last to communicate with Libby German before her death. After her death, the Anthony Shots profile told another person that he was supposed to meet up with Libby, but she never showed up. So let's have a look a bit at the timeline of Keegan's potential involvement. On February 14, 2017, Libby's and Abby's bodies were discovered near the trail. On February 20, 2017, 6 days after the murders, a school-aged girl in Galveston in Cass County gave her address to Anthony Shots. A day later, she saw a man in a ski mask looking in her bedroom window as she got off the school bus. On February 25, 2017, police raided the home in Peru in Miami County where Keegan Klein lived with his father. They found over 100 photos and videos of underage girls on several electronic devices. The hosts of Murder Sheet, a weekly true crime podcast, uncovered accidentally and only temporarily the published transcripts from the 2020 police interview with Keegan Anthony Klein while researching the 2017 killings. 27-year-old Keegan Klein is behind bars in Florida awaiting trial on 30 unrelated criminal charges, including child exploitation, possession of child, obstruction of justice, and synthetic identity deception. In the transcript discovered by journalist Klein and attorney Greenlee, Keegan admits to using the Snapchat and Instagram handle Anthony Shots to exchange messages with Libby, but denies killing the girls on February 13, 2017. In the transcript, police accuse Keegan of communicating with Libby on the day of the murders. He admits to talking with the girl, but repeatedly tells detectives he had nothing to do with the murders. He allegedly told police it was just a coincidence that he happened to talk to her, according to the transcript. I don't remember talking to Libby really, he allegedly said later on in the interview. I didn't even know who she really was until after I saw that on the news. Police confronted him with evidence that the Anthony Shots account communicated with another person online, explaining how they were supposed to meet that girl, but she never showed up. Keegan told investigators he would never have gone to meet Libby in person. According to the transcript, detectives also said in the interview that Klein had failed the polygraph test and told him they were aware he had deleted his Snapchat and Instagram accounts. Authorities also allegedly discovered he searched "How long does DNA last?" online. When asked why he searched that, Klein allegedly replied, "I have no clue, I don't know, probably because they DNA tested me." Asked why he was so concerned about his DNA in this case, Klein allegedly responded, "I wouldn't, that's just a common thing to freak out about." No, Klein, really is not. It really isn't. If you're not guilty, then, you don't freak out, especially knowing you didn't do anything and as such they wouldn't be able to find your DNA anywhere. In the interview, police questioned Keegan intensely about anyone else who may have had access to his devices. "I know you say you don't remember a girl that you ever talked to, but I know you remember Libby German," the officer asks. "You know you talked to her and you admitted to talking to her." Klein initially denies it and says he believes he was talking to one of her friends. "You admitted you talked to her for a few hours at a sleepover and then you blocked her because she was annoying you, remember?" "Oh, you're right, yeah," Klein replies. "You remember that?" the officer asks. "Yeah," Klein replies. Throughout this interview, Klein insisted he didn't remember specifically talking to Liberty, as he used the Anthony Shots profile to talk to multiple girls. But further into the transcript, when the officers claim that Anthony Shots arranged to meet Liberty at the Delphi bridge the day she died, he repeatedly insists that this is a lie. The officers tell him it's a fact that one of the girls in contact with the account asked Anthony Shots if he had heard what happened to Liberty, and Shots replied, "Oh my God, what happened? And yeah, we were supposed to meet, but she never showed up." Klein insists he never wrote that message. The officer tells Klein he genuinely believes he did not murder either girl. "But you need to tell me who was logging into these accounts," he asks. Again, Klein insists he doesn't know. Throughout the interview, he claims multiple people had access to the Anthony Shots account, including his father. Investigators believe at least 2 people used the account, based on the different syntax used in messages. At the end of the interview, the officers remind Klein that he twice failed a polygraph test when asked if he knew who killed the teens, and say he deleted his search history shortly afterward. Why would you, after you failed a polygraph about knowing about the Delphi investigation, come home, delete your Snapchat and your Instagram, which you used to communicate with Libby, and then you searched, "How long does DNA last?" Why would you do that? The detective asked. Klein claimed he probably searched that because he'd given a sample to police. In a separate jailhouse interview with AJLN in February of this year, journalist Barbara McDonald said Klein admitted setting up the Anthony Shots profile to solicit nude images from underage girls, but insisted he was not trying to meet any of those girls in real life. I don't really know, I was just lonely, you know what I mean, just talking to people. I don't know why I did it really, he told her when asked why he set it up. He also insisted he had no recollection of talking to Liberty. In that interview, per Fox 59, he told Barbara that he was sure he was not going to be charged with the murders and that investigators suspected his father was responsible. "Cause when I first got arrested, they told me that they knew it was my dad, and if I tell them, all my charges will be dropped," he told her. He also told her that his father was abusive and once held guns on him and his mother. He claimed his dad liked younger women and once boasted he slept with a 17-year-old when Klein was 20 years old. Klein apparently is due back in court on April 14th, but from the latest articles that I've read, there is a delay being asked. It seems that the trial will begin on May the 9th, 2022. An investigator told Klein, "I can honestly sit here and I'm telling you that I do not believe that you killed Libby." Police told him they believe a second person was communicating with girls using his devices. They asked him repeatedly whether his father knew his passcodes. "I wouldn't let my dad have my phone for long periods of time or nothing like that," Keegan Klein said. Keegan's father, Jerry Anthony Klein, goes by Tony and has a criminal history that includes conviction of sexual harassment, battery and theft. If you are wondering whose photos Keegan used to catfish, I have a good one for you here. The 25-year-old, who I'm not going to name, said in an exclusive statement that he is in direct contact with Indiana State Police and is helping in any way that he can with the investigation. The former fashion model, a father of 2, is now a patrol officer for the Ketchikan Police Department in Alaska. In his brief statement, he said he's been directed by superiors not to answer any questions about the case. The police officer found himself at the center of an update in the 2017 murders of Abby Williams 13 and her best friend Libby German 14, following a press release from Indiana State Police. In the release, the department said it was seeking information about a bogus social media account called Anthony Shots that detectives believed may be tied to the case. The profile was active between 2016 and 2017 across a number of social media platforms, including Instagram and Snapchat. The bogus account used images of the male model turned police officer and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and owning multiple sports cars. Some of the posts used by the catfish account were lifted directly from the model's Instagram page, showing him posing shirtless in the mirror. Other posts uploaded to Snapchat showed the fake account appearing to order thousands of dollars worth of clothing at luxury brands like Gucci and driving behind the wheel of Ferraris and Lamborghinis. The identity of the male model is known by the police. They said he is not considered a person of interest in the case. His images were used without his knowledge or consent. However, the model was aware that his images had previously been used for catfishing. In a post uploaded to Instagram, he wrote, "PSA, if you think you have added me on Facebook, you don't. I don't accept people I don't know. Secondly, I am not any other dating site, Snapchat, Kik, any other social media service besides Twitter and Instagram. If you think you have been talking to me through DMs, you aren't. You are talking to a fake. Thanks. In an earlier post shared in March 2018, he wrote, "Lately, I've been receiving hundreds of DMs asking if I'm talking to people on Tinder, Badoo, Snapchat, Facebook, and my answer is simply no. At this point," he later added, "if you get catfished, you probably deserve it. Do your research and be smart. These are my only social media accounts. I am not on any dating websites." When his photos were used just about everywhere in the media when the police first released the information of the account, this police officer was not aware of it, and he was never contacted by police prior to the photos being released. He found out from friends who spotted his photos circulating online, and that's how he became aware his photos were linked to a catfishing account possibly related to the murders of Abby and Libby. Oh my god, can you just imagine that you are just reading in the news that an online account using your photo is possibly linked to a murder? Oh my god, that must be so unsettling. Speaking to the Lafayette Journal and Courier, Libby's grandfather, Mike Patty, stated, "We've been saying it all along. Someone knows something. Someone's going to talk. Someone's going to think maybe this one thing I saw might mean something. And maybe that's the one thing that gets this guy." As far as the active state of the investigation goes, police have rightfully withheld most of their evidence and have even refused to say whether or not they have the killer's DNA. I honestly do think that they have the killer's DNA, and so do many other people, but maybe it's just a partial sample, which could be enough to eliminate suspects, but perhaps not enough to find him through DNA databases. They accepted DNA from prior suspects and other persons of interest, and they seem to be ruling out individuals through forensic testing. So that would suggest that they must have some sort of DNA. But as with any DNA, if you don't have a sample to compare it with, you can't really get a match. So if there's nothing in their databases, it won't be of much help unless they caught the actual killer. So as I'm sure many of you are interested in, I really wanted to find out Libby's and Abby's cause of death, the murder weapon used, evidence collected at the crime scene, and honestly guys, I went down the rabbit hole. There's so much published out there that is just very hard to say what's fact and what's fiction, theory, rumor, and so on. I managed to find some info, but I can't verify in any way if it's correct or just someone spreading rumors. Anyway, I need to give credit to Zavgirl, a YouTuber, for a video she published containing alleged messages between the volunteer searcher who found Abby and Libby and a friend. I'm going to leave the link for the video in the description down below, so you can check it out if you want. It's about half an hour long. And down the rabbit hole I go. Just a warning before I dig, some of these details might be graphic, so just a word of caution. Allegedly, there was an exchange of messages between the volunteer searcher who found Abby and Libby and his friend. The police have not confirmed or denied this, so as I said, take it with a grain of salt. I have no idea if this is accurate or not, but according to the messages, the crime scene was odd. Libby had her throat cut. She had most of the injuries. There was DNA collected from under her fingernails. She seemed to have tried to defend or shield Abby, and Abby was stabbed in the heart and the artery on the neck. Allegedly, there was barely any blood at the crime scene, so the rumor goes that either the girls were stabbed after death or they were killed somewhere else and placed at the location they were found later on, after the initial search finished. Allegedly, according to the text messages, the girls were posed at the crime scene. Abby was placed like a doll with the hood up, hands folded, and wearing the same clothing like seen in the photo on the bridge. According to an article, one of the volunteer searchers found Abby and Libby when he saw two deers, and as he looked up, he saw the girls. They were lying in the grass between a group of trees deep into the woods. The coroner's report, the alleged coroner's report, according to the searcher, stated that everything had finished by 3:30 p.m. This would be the point where the dad would still be waiting at the entrance for the girls, trying to get hold of them, which is beyond heartbreaking if it's true. Allegedly, the girls were not physically violated and Abby survived until the following day, trying to crawl away. So I'm guessing there must be some kind of signs on the body and at the crime scene for them to determine that she was trying to crawl away. Either marks on the ground or perhaps injuries on her elbows or hands suggestive of the crawling motion. If this is true, allegedly. The girls were not bound together, they were just placed next to each other, so they were sort of touching each other. Libby's top half was covered with leaves and sticks, and the only DNA would have been from Libby's fingernails. She fought for her life, allegedly. Whoever did this horrible crime targeted Libby. It was personal with her. It was very personal with Libby. Apparently, Libby's head was just an inch from being taken completely off, and Abby was stabbed in the heart and the artery in her neck. If this is true, this suggests to me that the killer knew what they were doing and they knew where the vital organs were. As for the audio, allegedly down the hill audio is longer than what was released to the public, apart from the bridge guy being heard telling Abby and Libby to go down the hill. It was a 2 minutes video, but really only the audio was captioned, which was heard by, allegedly, by Mike Petty, Betty Petty, Libby's grandparents, and Anna, Abby's mother. They could hear Abby asking Libby if the creepy guy was still following them. Libby confirmed he was, and the girls could then be heard talking about where they should go. Then the next thing was him telling them to go down the hill. And then they heard a gun being cocked. So if this is true, then that's how the killer got them where he wanted them to go, with a gun. But I don't think that the gun was used at all. At any point, it would have been loud, echoing in the woods in the middle of the day. Someone would have heard something, unless he only used the gun to scare the girls into doing what he wanted without actually firing. There is a lot of confusion with what is being released by the police to the public and a lot of denying from the authorities concerning other information out there. For example, Keegan's interview transcript, which was sealed after the podcast released it to the public. At one point I read the police denied that the transcript came from them. Then we also have the 2 minutes video, which was only shown to the family. I think I read somewhere that the police denied that as well. However, there is a media article from August 2017 which says that police stated they showed the recording to the family. So if you will, this could be confirmation that indeed there was a longer video audio out there. Going back to what we definitely know and what is confirmed, the reward fund, which continues to stand today, is at $325,000, which is for any information that could lead to an arrest. So please, if you think that you know something, don't be afraid to reach out. You can help solve a crime, bring closure to the family and everyone invested in this case, and you will also be rewarded as well for it. If you do have any information, you are encouraged to reach out. You can call the tip line by dialing 844-459-5786, and you can anonymously email any tips to Abby and LibbyTip at cacoshrf.com. The latest update in this case is from March 2022. According to the update, the FBI confirmed they are removing personal identifiers about the man in the latest poster, who is wanted in the Delphi investigation. They are doing this at the request of Indiana State Police, so the public will focus on the sketch, picture and voice recording. This means that the current height, weight and age of the man identified in the investigation are being removed from the current posters. In February 2022, Indiana State Police Superintendent Carter said he believes detectives will identify the person who killed the girls while he's still superintendent. 3 years, 2 years, 11 months, Carter said in the interview. It could be today. We continue to move in a positive direction. Investigators would like any individual that communicated with, met, or attempted to meet the Anthony Shots profile to contact law enforcement at Abby and Libby tip at cacoshrf.com or calling 765-822-3535. Detectives are asking for as much information as possible, including when you communicated with Anthony Shots, how you communicated with the profile, what social media apps the account used, if Anthony Shots attempted to meet you or obtain your address. When submitting a tip, please remember to be as specific as possible to a description, give a name and age if possible, give a connection to Delphi and that person's location or address at this time, and don't forget to leave information on how detectives can contact you for possible clarification of your tip. Tips can also remain anonymous. For tips, you can contact law enforcement via, like I said, the email abbyandlibbetip@cacoshrf.com or the tip line 765-822-3535, Indiana State Police 800-382-7537, Carroll County Sheriff 765-564-2413. Okay guys, having reached the end of this video, do you want to know what I think? Okay. I don't think that Keegan killed Abby and Libby. I think it was his father. And I also think that the police know it. The second sketch released was strategic in my opinion. I think that the first one that they released at the beginning is the correct one. But I believe they are working an angle here, and I also believe there is a specific reason why they arrested Keegan on those charges. Just a few days after Abby and Libby died, they raided Keegan's house on the girl that gave her address. Keegan lived with his father, remember? So almost from the beginning, the police were already aware of him and his father. So they must have been aware of the father's previous charges of sexual harassment. His father's name is Anthony Klein. Anthony Shots profile, anyone? Tony, Anthony Shots, maybe as in Anthony calls the shot, Tony calls the shots. And I also think that it's possible Tony suggested the creation of those online accounts to lure girls online, and they both benefited from this. I think they both chatted with girls online, but I think it was the father who planned to meet with Libby that day at the bridge. So police were aware of Keegan and Tony in 2017, just a few days after Abby and Libby were found. And the updated sketch was released in 2019, right? Then, on 19th of August 2020, the police interviewed Keegan, the interview which is now under seal. In that interview, they are talking to him about his conversations with Libby, and they keep on pestering him about his father, telling him they know he didn't do it, but they want to know about his father. He fails 2 polygraph tests when he's asked if he knows who killed the girls. He fails, which to me points to him knowing who did it. Who could he have known if not his father? There was allegedly DNA found at the crime scene under Libby's fingernails, suggesting that she fought for her life. Keegan gave his DNA to police and then went on searching online about DNA. Why would you search about DNA if you are not involved in anything suspicious, right? Or you know someone who was involved. Then you go ahead and then you delete the accounts you used to catfish. So he's interviewed on the 19th of August, he doesn't say anything about his father, and then bam, on 29th of August, he is being charged with underage explicit materials. From 2017 until 2020, for 3 years, he's not arrested or charged, yet 10 days after his interview where he's not blaming his father, he's arrested and charged. This, in my opinion, was a move the police did on purpose. They were trying to get Keegan to give up his father to turn on him. They released the updated sketch in an attempt to scare Keegan so he turns against Tony. Suddenly, the suspect is not a middle-aged man anymore, but he is between 18 and 40 years old, with a youthful appearance. And in the same press conference, the police makes sure to point out that they think the killer might even be in the room. They are taunting him, showing him that they are onto him and he's about to be caught, in an attempt to put pressure on Keegan to confess what he knows, in my opinion. Otherwise, why would the police use Libby's and Abby's tip-line email address for the catfishing accounts if the two are not connected? So the police now see they can't get Keegan's father, so they bring Keegan in for questioning, and he's not giving up Tony, and they charge him. They think he will crack. I believe that Keegan will crack. He's now in prison and know how that feels, so I think we need to get ready for his trial in May this year. He will most likely turn on Tony. Maybe get a deal with the investigators for a lesser sentence. Let's also think for a minute about Tony and why I think that he did it. Tony is a hunter. Well, so is his son. And as with any hunter, they hunt for the thrill, for the control, and to ultimately kill the prey and keep a trophy. I'm not a hunter myself, but I think that's more or less why hunters hunt. They like to be in control, they like the chase, the adrenaline, they like to dominate, and when they kill the prey, they win. In Tony's case, however, I don't think that he planned on killing Abby and Libby. In my opinion, I think he just wanted to meet Libby and do God knows what horrible things to her, but not kill her. But Libby was probably nervous in meeting someone in real life for the first time in the woods, so she took her best friend Abby with her just in case. The killer didn't expect that. He expected one girl only, and his plan just got ruined. So he had to do something. He had to improvise. He's following the girls, and he then gets them just where he wants them, as he wants them. He's literally chasing them down the hill, just like a hunter chases their prey. Alleged audio footage was released only to family, where Abby and Libby can be heard asking each other if he's still following them and saying that they are scared. He ambushed them both. Allegedly, Libby had the most injuries, which would suggest, being the oldest of the two, I think that she tried to defend herself and her best friend Abby. And then the signatures at the crime scene. Libby was posed and naked, which to me indicates that the killer had interest in Libby, which again could go back to the father, to Keegan's father, allegedly arranging to meet with Libby. This is like how a hunter would showcase his piece of art, the prey he just hunted, and this is his trophy. He could have left Libby dressed just like Abby, but he didn't. To him, Libby was important. He wanted to show the world that he had control. He was the hunter. He was proud of what he achieved and wanted the girls to be found. I don't think there was anything sexual in this instance. Maybe when he set up the meetup, he had these ideas, but the killing, I don't think he was sexual. And also, he didn't conceal the girls, and he did it on purpose. He could have concealed them because Libby's bare chest was covered with leaves, but he didn't. Abby allegedly had been placed just like a doll with her hood up, but she wasn't naked. She wasn't as important to the killer as Libby was. If we are to believe the rumors, then it's possible the girls were killed somewhere else and brought back to the final location. This could explain why there wasn't much blood at the crime scene, just like a hunter would drain their prey of blood. And I also think that Keegan helped him after the fact with the girls. Keegan didn't kill them and he wasn't there when they died, but I think he helped his father after it had happened. And having said that, it's quite possible the witness who reported seeing the young man in the broken down car was Keegan. And if he was Keegan, this young man was possibly quite honest as to why he was there. Remember, he was waiting for his father to pick him up? Some of it could be true, but rather Keegan was there to help his father with moving the bodies after the fact. I think that this makes a lot of sense. And they lived just 30 miles away from Delphi. They were also hunters. So, was the most heartbreaking thing in the Delphi murders is that Libby's father was there in the car at the entrance of the trail waiting for them, and they were on their way back to meet him, and whilst he was there waiting and trying to reach them, just a few miles down from him they were being killed, which I think, and it truly breaks my heart for him, will haunt him forever. Libby and Abby were truly remarkable girls, and the bond they shared should be used as an example of what true friendship should be like. They had genuine, honest friendship, a true meaning of friends till the end. Even though at least one of them could have escaped, they chose not to, and they stood by each other until the end. Lastly, I really believe the police are closing down on the killer, and very soon they will arrest him and charge him. I think the sequence of events we are seeing right now is an indication of an arrest very soon being made for Abby's and Libby's death, and I'm sure Libby will help solve her and her best friend's murder. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please let me know what do you think about everything in the comment section down below. Also, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever way you prefer. Either way, it really helps me and my channel out. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button, and also make sure you have your notification bell turned on so you are notified of any new videos I upload on the channel. Also, I think that at the suggestion and request of some of you who are watching me regularly, I think that I will be making a Patreon account. So if I make it by the time I publish this video, the link for the Patreon will be here on your screen, and also will be down in the description below. For now, I'm not sure exactly what content I will be adding on Patreon, but if I will be doing that, then obviously I will inform all of you. It might just be, I will have a tier, and I will just publish the video one day earlier to the members. So yeah. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please take care and stay safe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!